Welcome. I will be discussing my thoughts on the first read-through of the Outlander book, Voyager. It was interesting that Lord Melton and the lieutenant both agreed that a debt of honor should be paid. They made quite an interesting pair, and considering the circumstances, they were fairly decent. I think that whole section was well done in the show right after Culloden. I think this was one of the best opening chapters to a book that I've ever read. It jumps right into where book 2 left off in a flawless transition. I have a note here that there's a chicken recipe that I want to try. Here we go. Stuffed and basted, surrounded by crushed garlic, sprigs of rosemary, and curls of lemon peel, with a quick squeeze of lemon juice over the buttery skin. You know what? Garlic and rosemary chicken with a bit of lemon. Let's make this happen. We're barely a few pages in, and Claire is already complaining about her shoes. Pretty sure Claire is a hobbit at this point. If it was up to her, she would never wear shoes. I really wish they had kept this in the show, but I like that running thread where Claire becomes involved in the perpetual adoration, and it started kind of last book and it's continuing here. She finds it to be really peaceful and reminds her of being with Jamie. I really like that she found her own thing. I wouldn't call it a hobby exactly, but it kind of is. It's something that's truly hers. Even at all the upheaval of going between times, that's something that she can find and do in any time, and it kind of centers her, I think. I was not expecting the Brianna and Fiona friendship, and I loved it. From the show, I kind of got the feeling they were rivals and very cold to each other, but no. They liked each other. Roger continues with his fantastic flirtation tips. Now, as someone who cannot at all flirt, it's impossible for me. I have respect for this, and I'm trying to learn what they are. Let's see. You look like a medieval carving. I really like how the chapters are going back and forth between the stories, and the pacing is really well done. Trying to read my notes after this much time has passed is honestly kind of hilarious. This one says, recipe book. That's it. Thankfully, I put page numbers. Past Alexa knew to do this. Okay. Mrs. McClintock's cookery and pastry work was laid open on the table beside the pie pan. I figured this was a real book, and I made a note to check up on it and maybe buy a copy. I knew it was a real book. They have a shortbread recipe. Let's see. Flour, butter, water. Put a mutchkin of good barm. A what? Oh, it's a Scottish unit of liquid measure. About 0.9 pints. That is such a cool name. Okay, we need to redo the scene in Lord of the Rings with Pippin now. Instead of saying, it comes in pints, I'm getting one, he'll be like, it comes in munchkins, I'm getting one.
You've had a whole half already.
Sugar cakes, 7 eggs. Yikes. Orange peel and lemon peel. This looks really good. All right, we're getting already sidetracked. Ooh, chicken pie. Okay, stop. All right. Hands off the historic recipes. These opening chapters flowed beautifully. It was completely captivating, nothing like book 2 where I had a very difficult time paying attention. The incident where Fergus loses his hand, though, was way more violent here in the book. It was almost more of an accident that the saber hit him right there. And the captain, I think, even went back to Jenny and was like, I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. Claire really did whatever she could to help Jenny. Not only did she talk about planting potatoes, but she said, you need to build a priest's hole. Like, there's going to be a time where you need to hide people. Which just makes me more frustrated when later on, Jenny is so angry when Claire comes back. Because she did so much for them. I made a note that I just love Roger's narration. Roger stared vaguely about the room, which strongly resembled the sacking of the Library of Alexandria, just before the first torch was lit. It was blue, he said at last. I distinctly remember it was blue. You can just picture the scene in your head of his room with papers just scattered everywhere and books in piles on the floor. It was just such a visual, wonderful way to explain a messy room. I love that Claire sings. We get a little bit of this on the show, but I wish they added it in more, because right here, there used to be an old song from the First World War, she said reflectively. I used to hear it sometimes when some of Uncle Lamb's old army friends would come around and stay up late to get drunk. It went, How you gonna keep 'em down on the farm after they've seen Perry? We got a Joe Abernathy reference. It's really interesting reading the book when I kind of know who characters are already. So the minute Joe showed up, I was like, ah! Whereas if you were reading the books first, you would be like, who? It's really interesting how he was compared to Master Raymond as well. And the show played the Master Raymond theme when Joe was in the room. I'm just saying, I don't think it's a coincidence they put it in. I really enjoyed the transitions. For example, Claire finds Jamie's name as being at Ardsmuir, and then boom, there we are, back in time. The next chapter is 1755. It reminded me almost of a dance, the way it went back and forth. I really enjoyed the description of how Gray's handwriting turned from elegant script into just a sprawl because of all the paperwork, and he was just like, okay, I'm gonna do this properly, and then by the end it was just like, oh, it's close enough. I actually just loved all the John stuff. Like when he was screaming and throwing inkwells at the rats and then went all out on the cats thing. I really liked the translation scene in the book when Jamie did his best to be gentle and honest with Gray about what he learned. He hid a few things, but it was weird how in the show he was really cold and belligerent, and I feel like he didn't keep his word. And that really bothered me because I feel like Jamie's a very honorable person. And we got that here in the book, so I don't know what was going on with the show adaptation there. Maybe it wasn't as dramatic, but I found it far more intriguing to find out what Jamie had learned, having it done this way. I really enjoyed this anecdote scene from Gray. It's about Lady Hensley, who picks up a novel. Oh, Countess, you are so courageous to attack a novel of such stupendous size. I fear I should never dare to start so lengthy a book myself. To which Mother replied, don't worry about it for a moment, my dear. You wouldn't understand it anyway. The shade! I want to meet Gray's mother now. They really showed us the difference between Gray and Randall here as well. I mean, as if we didn't already know. But after Jamie has to be flogged, Gray's reaction is to throw up all over his paperwork. Like, he can't handle it. He's horrified by having to do this. And it just made him so endearing. Never thought someone throwing up would do that, but it did. This is so much better than book 2 by a mile. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Geneva was even worse in the book than the show. I mean, she was a piece of work on the show, but Geneva in this, oh, absolutely awful. And then we have, again, confirmation that Claire either saw the Loch Ness Monster or a dinosaur or something, but there's definitely a portal in the lake, which led to a discussion that the UK might have hundreds of portals everywhere, which really opens things up for the later American portal. And the question is, do they only bring you through time, or could you jump portals? Could you go, I want to jump into a portal to Bodega Bay in the 1970s? Could you do that? Or is it just same portal, different time? I feel like with enough magic involved, and if you knew the right spell or combination of gemstones maybe, it could get you different times and places. We do have it confirmed that sun and fire feasts are the way to go. For example, Beltane makes it easier to travel. I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but at one point Claire randomly opens up a book and she finds page 42. That can't be a coincidence, right? The Pirate Bodice Ripper novel is hilarious. I kind of wish they had put this in on the show, but the way they should do it is she opens it up and begins reading, and then we, the viewers, get to see what she's reading. The show would transform into the most comical, over-the-top pirate romance ever. That would have been hilarious. This is a missed opportunity. I think I said this the last 2 videos, but as much as I enjoy the Outlander show, why do they keep stripping out all the comedy? These are hilarious books and they keep making them all melodramatic. I mean, not that they aren't, but moments like this would have been brilliant. Also, everyone who was angry at Frank that were book fans, I finally understand now. They never brought this out on the show, but they sure did in the books. I still like Outlander TV Frank, but Outlander book Frank, no. Some of the things that he said about Joe and Claire's relationship were horrifying. I don't know why they didn't bring this out on the show. And that's one of the reasons they don't get along, from what I can tell. And instead they made it all about this kind of emotional family drama, but there was more to it than that. Another scene they cut that I absolutely thought should have been in the series is poor Claire trying to find a vaguely period accurate dress. Now, it's cool that they actually made one for her on the show. However, her trying to find a dress without a zipper was just so relatable as a cosplayer. We didn't get to see the gold gown. Not to mention, the whole dynamic was a little bit different. Like, Brianna started getting super into everything. Like, she was carving pumpkins at Samhain. She was waiting at the stones, ready to go through if things went awry. Like, she was much more proactive as well and into the whole magic thing. Speaking of the zipper, it was hilarious when Jamie was trying to get the gold gown off and he's like, "What is this? What is this strange device? How do I get it off?" As someone who is starting to get their first gray hairs, I really loved what Jamie had to say about it, and I'm going to try and remember that when it's really starting to show. It's like beechwood in the rain. Drops coming down from the leaves and across the bark. Between this and what they talk about on the show, it actually transformed my opinion of getting gray hair. Because when it first starts, you kind of freak out. You're like, I'm old now. The beautiful way that they've been describing Claire and her gray hair in this series is so special. It's like something you don't need to worry about anymore. You can embrace and know that even though you're getting older, you're still you with the silver rain beechwood hair. Another tie-in with the future American plot lines with the whole snakebite incident when Jamie refuses to remove the leg to save himself. And they kept using Ian as an example. There was a scene right here where Ian himself weighed in on a similar incident. After Culloden, Jenny thought they'd have to remove the leg, but Ian said no. Jamie wouldn't want that. And whenever they talk about Ian and Jamie being like brothers, right here you see that. He knew. I really enjoyed this book, but it's not going on my shelf, and there's one reason why. And that's because of Mr. Willoughby's portrayal. On the show, they really treat him with way more dignity and respect, and I get why he's written this way. It's accurate to the time period. But sometimes when you're an author, there's being accurate, and then there's just... If you've read the book, you know what I mean. Some things are worth changing. Claire arrives back in time 2 days later, already kicking her shoes off. I think my favorite part in the book might have been when they sent a sommelier to track and find Jamie. I mean, talk about brilliant, right? And anyone who has the training to recognize the bouquet and the mouthfeel of that region could easily track exactly where it's being sold. And now I just want a book series about sommelier spies, tracking all these things down. So clever. Another interesting change was it seemed like Jamie was totally done with Edinburgh. Everything was on fire. He was out, not coming back. But here in this story, it seemed like it was just a temporary thing, and he even had plans in place for returning. And Jamie seemed to be much more in control and having things well in hand. The whole coastal smuggling scene was very exciting. As I've mentioned before, when I read a book, I see it like a movie. Ooh, I really had fun imagining all the fight scenes in that. The really heart-wrenching scene was when Jenny betrayed Claire and had that line where Claire is just planning to go back to Brianna and go home. And Jenny coldly says, "I think that's best." Ouch. If it weren't for young Ian, that would have been the end of the story. Claire would have just gone home. And what a super gothic cinematic scene with the thunder rolling and going overhead and young Ian riding through that to find her. Also, Ian's capture scene was very different. It was much foggier. There was cannon fire going on. It was very exciting. I guess they just didn't have the budget. It was interesting to see how Claire always mixed natural medicine with the latest in modern advancements, even when she was at the hospital. "Did you see what Dr. Randall did?" A shocked intern's cry echoed in memory, making me smile as I wrote, "She fed the stomach in 134B boiled flowers." Go Claire. That's kind of my personal belief when it comes to medicine as well. You need a mix. If I ran away in a tall ship, I would want Claire as my ship's surgeon. The only problem is she would come with Jamie and he gets seasick. That could be awkward. We get singing Claire again, only this time with pirate songs. Where are the singing scenes? I miss them. There's also a bigger thread for the Freemasons here. They mentioned it at Ardsmuir, but now we see them really coming in to help. And what a community they are to the characters. The scene where Claire visited Faith's grave broke me. I was crying along with her. I even remember that she brought pink tulips, and Mother Hildegard came out to talk to her. That was a beautiful scene. It was so sad. I love the crotchety ship's cook, Murphy. He knows he's really in charge, and Claire had to keep constantly bribing him. It's also weird that they changed this, which is Claire was the one who kept trying to get Jamie to try acupuncture and stuff, and he was like, no, no, no. It was weird how in the show they changed that. It's also interesting that they keep bringing up that gravestone in Scotland, showing that the two of them live and die together, but in Scotland. Which, I mean, is kind of hopeful for the whole America thing, because I'm worried about the house catching fire still. But here we have concrete, or rather granite, probably, proof that they're fine, and they somehow end up in Scotland? I don't know, it's kind of vaguely hopeful though. It really reminds me of Timeline. I don't know if you've read that book. Super romantic. Ugh.
You make your own history.
I say that often. They made theirs together.
They made a movie of it, which isn't as good, but still watchable. I enjoy seeing it. My notes mention again, Claire is 48 here. As someone who's about to hit 40, it's so inspirational to have an older heroine who's more my age. So often I'll be reading novels and like the mother of the protagonist is younger than I am, and I'm like, okay, this is really depressing. Yet again, knowing a little bit more about what happens later is so interesting when reading these early books. Because in the scene when she's watching so many people die on the ship, like Mr. Pound, and she keeps saying how frustrating it is that she could have saved all of them if only she had had some penicillin. Her meeting Gray right there was so adorable. He was kind to her, didn't have any idea who she was, just knew that she was suffering because she couldn't save all these people, and he did his best to cheer her up. And again, this is why later in America she risks everything to try and come up with some penicillin on her own to save people. She does not want to go through this again that she went through in this book. And now I really understand why she has this obsession in America. And then towards the end, when Hans gives her the knuckle salute, oh, Hornblower fans, you know how important that is. I really appreciated as well how the acting captain apologized to Claire and said he wished he had never mentioned in the logbook about Jamie, because if he hadn't written it down, he probably would have just let them go. But because it's in the logbook, it's too late. He has to follow up on it. The scene where Willoughby explains his situation is much longer and more detailed in the book, and I did like that piece, but the rest of it, ugh. I really wanted to know what Lord John's reaction was to Claire jumping off the ship. I mean, even though he didn't know quite who she was, you would think he'd at least be like, where's the lady surgeon? What happened to her? Why haven't I seen her recently? I kind of headcanon this scene where Lord John is like, so where's the lady surgeon gone? And the acting captain is like, oh, well, we sort of kidnapped her and then she jumped overboard to get away. I beg your pardon? That would have been hilarious. The whole section of Claire's escape was also very visual, and you really felt like you were right in there with her going through it. The section where she was up in the tree with the storm thrashing around her. Oh, this is where I really got angry at the adaptation, though. Do you know what's not in the book? The ants. The ants are not in the book. Why did they do this to us? The show needlessly traumatized me. Dr. Stern is really interesting. He reminds me a bit of Dr. Maturin in the Aubrey Maturin series. And Claire running around trying to catch spiders for him. Ugh, it was so cute. Why couldn't they have put cute spiders in? Why did they have to put ants in? They also started discussing gay pirates now. And I'm wondering, am I watching Black Sails? We needed more gay pirates and less of Mr. Willoughby to really make this book shine. Quite the scene when Jamie went to rescue Claire, but Claire had escaped and they were just like, oh. Interesting point that Claire made as well. Knowing Jamie got seasick really easily, she didn't really bother researching America in the time period. She figured they'd be in Europe the whole time. So she had done a ton of research about Scotland and Europe and figured, we'll never end up in America. Why would we be on a ship going that far with Jamie? So this explains what happened later when Jamie kept having those, so what's going to happen? And Claire's like, I don't know. Brianna, do you know? Brianna's like, well, I think I read something in school. The whole Miss Campbell and Reverend scene was totally different in the book. She went missing, and he was off trying to find her. Also, at the party, Claire was in violet with a lace bodice, but I'm pretty sure she ended up in gold, which is kind of an homage to the gold dress that we never got to have. Claire immediately figured out that Lord John was in love with Jamie, like one scene in. And all these mysterious murders going on? Ooh, that was unexpected. And still no Galus? I was this far through the book with this much left, and Galus had not appeared yet, and I was very confused. I was like, does she not come till the next book? Are we going to do all of the Galus stuff in, 100 pages? The whole scene where Claire kept fake fainting, hilarious. Especially since she pulled Lord John into it. I mean, she basically was like, don't give me away if you value Jamie's life. And Lord John is just like, we just met. And then the really big difference that I wish they had put in, because I love watching the actor who plays Lord John and Claire's interactions. He's the one who breaks the news about Geneva and the sun. Jamie didn't say a word. He's in so much trouble right now when she gets back. Not because of what he did, but because he did not tell her. And this is like the second time he's lied since she came back. My notes are just gleeful excitement at this point because we jumped into Gray's POV and I loved it so much. I know that there are some novels about him that are like spin-offs or something. If there's a point in the timeline when I should stop and read, I think Lord John has several novels, let me know where chronologically I should do that. Because if this is any indication, I love his POV. Not as much as Roger. He's still my favorite. Okay, finally we have Galus. And it's interesting how she asked who Roger was. They had only met really briefly, but apparently he made an impression. Now, she does practice magic, so she might have sensed something about him, either being someone capable of time travel or just the fact that they're related. And whoa, we finally find out really why Dougal partly rescued Galus from that fate. She threatened to kill the baby if he didn't. Now that's a scene I'd like to see. You know I'm a Dougal fan. I want to know more. Where's the deets on that? I love the scene where Gelly and Claire are discussing zombies and Jamie's just like, what are you two talking about? What is a zombie? This is where it really started getting interesting from a magical perspective. Blood or stones are needed to cross. You have to have the right travel protection stones. It apparently makes the range about 200 years or so. Or you'd have to use blood. And when you have that, you have way more control over where you go. I kind of wonder if that's how you would jump between the locations in addition to time, is by using blood. That's at least what Gelly seems to think. She also did a whole crystal grid with quicksilver to, in addition, really guide where you're going. Whereas Claire is just kind of, oh, take me where I'm needed. She has kind of the doctor's opinion of time travel of, all right, TARDIS, go where I need to go. Whereas Gelly is more like Romana de Volterlunder and is like, no, I need to know where I'm going. And then Diamond Dust Pentagram, odd choice there. Usually the magic in the books is fairly accurate, but I don't know what that was about. Weird. Someone was playing D&D, I think. That sounds much more like a Dungeons & Dragons spell. I wrote a note. When a witch steals a photo, you know you're in trouble. It's like, if you went to visit Gelly and you had a photo missing afterward, that's a problem. Also, don't give her any of your hair. The whole Reverend Campbell was the serial killer reveal. Yikes. I don't know if I'm completely forgetful, but I don't remember any of that in the show. I'll have to look back. Here's another interesting magical tidbit in the world building. There's a theory that Claire will come into her full magical powers when she hits menopause. So again, interesting that this book series would grant greater power to older women. And I kind of love that. It also made me think of the future indigenous oracle in America that she meets, who says something about she'll find her abilities when her hair is fully white. In other words, Claire is the mother aspect right now. She's magical, but when she becomes the crone, she's going to be incredibly powerful. And I'm really looking forward to that. I hope we get to that in the book series where we see her just blossom into what all these little hints and breadcrumbs are suggesting. Oh, I have another note. The diamond dust is what stops that awful buzzing noise in the circle. All right. Again, the Mr. Willoughby plotline just, so frustrating. I like that they reimagined his character in the show and gave him a happy ending, and I really wish that's what I was reading. I can't believe they cut off the huge sea chase sequence with that dangerous escape before the storm scene, and then it specifically mentions she sees Acting Captain Leonard's body. What a moving scene. But I guess they put all their budget for cool sea battles into black sails. And I don't care, because I love black sails. They can take all the budget away from Outlander they want. It's so bad. The conclusion is, this is way better than book 2, but I don't think I'd want to reread it. Maybe reference it. I plan to keep it around. Maybe. I don't know. The whole Willoughby thing really bothered me. But overall, really intriguing to see what they changed, what they didn't change. Some of the adaptation was excellent. And it really made me want to go back and rewatch season 3, other than just endlessly listening to the soundtrack, because I love the music from this season. And I want to know more about all this technical magic stuff, because that was fascinating. I hope we get more in future books. So I will see you next time for book 4.